There you go, Jack. I've promoted you to a panelist now.
Great. And I'm going to try and turn the video on, even though it's at the farm. We'll see.
I can see you just fine.
Perfect. Hi, Ann.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You too. I've already seen you several times in the public spotlight. I think there was some good webinars that Safe and Just has done where you appeared.
Okay.
So we appreciate you joining today.
Of course, happy to help.
We are also now live streaming on the MJA Facebook page in case we hit capacity for this webinar. So if at some point you get booted off and you're unable to rejoin because we hit capacity, you would be able to go to our Facebook page and watch the live stream there. And hello, Sarah.
Hey, Mariah, how you doing? I'm just getting situated here.
We understand. It takes a moment to settle in there.
Good to see you, Jack, and nice to meet you, Dr. Marr.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining. Thanks for all your support.
And I am gonna plan to share my screen and hopefully it will go smoothly there. Oops, not at the right start. And I think it's okay if we wait another minute or two to see if anyone else is joining us, and we'll get started there. Thank you for everybody who is on. If you would like, the chat is open, so you are able to put in any questions along the way. We will pause as we are going through the legal language of the bill to allow for any questions on sections, but we are going to walk through it. And then at the end, we are going to kind of recap and compare to previous iterations of the good time credit and productivity bills that have existed here in the state of Michigan, along with current legislation has been introduced in the past few months, just so that people can understand kind of the comparison of what we have presented versus what exists. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to put those in the chat and we'll make sure to address them.
And Mariah, as I'm currently in dereliction of my duties as a daddy for my daughter's graduation party, I just wanted to let you know that I'll have essentially a hard stop at 2 o'clock or so, but I figured we'd be done well in advance of that.
Yes, our plan is to definitely be done well in advance. And I think if we'd like, we can go ahead and get started. So for just some introductions to begin with. Sarah, if you'd like to go first, I have your name here first on the page. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and explain what you are working on with us and why we've invited you here as a panelist today.
Sure. Thanks, Mariah. I am the lawyer of the panel today, which should invite a large yawn. But basically, my role has been to help MJA choose words that really fulfill the vision that you all are putting forth, and to make sure that the form of the bill follows both your strategy, what you want to accomplish, and also avoids some other little nitty-natty legal issues, so that by the time it's actually introduced and actually passed, that it'll be enforced the way that you want it to be, as opposed to just being sort of nice window dressing. So Jack had originally called on me and brought me into the team, and I'd had a chance and the good fortune to meet the members of MJA in the process. I've been practicing for about 20 years. Almost all of my practice, over 95%, has been in federal litigation and federal related work, with a large amount dealing with either criminal law or criminal legal related issues on the civil side. And I have a strong personal interest in the sense of justice, in seeing that Michigan return to being a state that is on the front edge of how we should really handle criminal justice reform and criminal justice practice, as it once was perhaps say 100 years ago. And now, unfortunately, through a variety of just maybe status quo lethargy or whatever it may be, we're now on the tail end. We're really at the rear of criminal justice reform. And so I'm looking forward to just continuing to work with MJA to try to help all of y'all see this passion through.
Thank you. Dr. Marr.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Ann Mahar. I am the researcher at Safe and Just Michigan. I have been there for about 2 years. Before that, I was in academia and teaching criminology and criminal justice. So at Safe and Just, I collect all the data, run reports, do a lot of research. And one of the things that I've really focused on in the last 2 years is the history and changes that good time, disciplinary credits, and the like have gone through in the state. So any kind of questions regarding the political history, I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. And Jack.
Well, first, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that has gotten us this far. Sarah from Clancy Advisors, along with our internationally recognized law firm, White & Case. The good folks from Safe and Just Michigan, like Dr. Mahar and John Cooper, who have been advisors behind the scenes, helping guide us because we're a young organization. And then the dedicated staff, really, that has moved mountains. Rich Griffin, who has joined us this year as our campaign director. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say that Mariah, our executive director, has really pushed this ball forward tremendously. So I'm just an ordinary person that wants to see change come to the state of Michigan. And without the teamwork of all these people, we wouldn't have gotten this far. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jack. It looks like Rich is not going to be joining us at this time, but I know many of you who have joined us for previous panels have seen Rich and talked to him. And if you aren't volunteering with us in any way, you'll cross paths with Rich. So we are literally just going to take the time to walk through this language here. So I guess the best way to explain how this works is we started with a request that we submitted to the Legislative Service Bureau in Lansing, Michigan. Through Senator Irwin, we said, here are the few basic things we'd like written. We submitted that back early February, I believe, and received back sometime in the late March timeframe, a draft that they gave us. The draft that they gave us, there were many items that we wanted to improve upon. And that's where Sarah and the team at White & Case came in. And so we gave them the draft we had received back, and they went through and made some edits. So it is a new bill that is modifying previous existing legislative statutes that exist in Michigan. And so there will be times where it references other things. And that is important as Sarah will tell us, because unfortunately, we really want to make this clear and very easily understood for everyone. So as we walk through theirs, it may seem simple for us to define things in a certain way, but we did that so that there aren't legal challenges down the road, and that for the average citizen who has to make a decision whether they support this legislation or not, they can easily read the language and understand it. So starting with that, we have a proposal for a new bill modifying this, and it listed out. I know many people have asked us in terms of what we're using, what information, that the term good time. We're going to stick with good time for now. I know there's lots of feelings regarding that phrase. However, it is a very easily well understood social concept. And so that's why we are sticking with the good time name. And then going into that, the next part is the absence of a record of behavior would state that prisoners must receive that good time for each month as to which the Department of Corrections lacks a record, that it found the prisoner guilty of a major misconduct during the month. I believe, Sarah, this first paragraph is just kind of an overview. Is that the best way to describe this first one?
I have too many screens. It takes my mouse a little while to get from one place to the other. Yes, that's true. And really, there's a lot of work that's done here. This is part of the driving force. This is where we tell the courts and other people that for each month where they're not guilty of the major misconduct, they get the good time credit. So this lifts a lot of the weight here while still summarizing what's going on in other pieces of the bill.
So as we move into the second clause, under the code, the Corrections Code, the 1953 Public Act, we're just referring back. So a month will mean a calendar month. There are 12 calendar months in a year. There were a number of iterations as we work through the correct legal language that would match something that is achievable in an administrative process. And I'll allow Jack just to speak a little bit more into that of why it has been written a month means a calendar month.
So this is, I guess, a simplified version. We had talked about many variations, but for ease and simplicity, a month is a 30-day reduction in the sentence here. We talked about a day for a day credit. We talked about 6 months for 6 months, and it seemed like the right logical chunk of time to create this credit system for. Did you want more than that, Mariah?
No, unless there's something Sarah would like to add in regards to that, but I think that clearly defines for everybody, we mean a calendar month. So unfortunately, some calendar months are a little bit shorter, some are a little bit longer, but it will match that 30 days for one calendar month.
And Mariah, just to supplement what you're mentioning, you all had also had a chance to speak with the MDOC, and their current practice is really to calculate things based on months, calendar months, that is. So this is also the easiest and politically most expedient way to just dovetail this right into the system they already have.
Fabulous. And then B, it does clearly state a reduction of 30 days from a prisoner sentence. So as we get into subsection 7, we'll go into a few more details, but a good time credit must be deducted from both a prisoner's minimum and maximum sentence in order to determine his or her parole eligibility date and discharge date. This clearly defines those who are covered and who will be receiving this calculation. I know there are lots of people who ask in regards to how we are addressing individuals that do not have a numbered sentence currently. Unfortunately, this particular bill will not address people who do not have a numbers attached to their sentence, but everyone who has that maximum and minimum will be able to be working on earning credits for that reduction. And we have focused on both the minimum and maximum because that would be the largest impact. We do not want individuals who are being good, who are receiving their credit, to continue to appear before the parole board and be flopped because their maximum doesn't change in any way, shape, or form, even though they are following the policy that we are implementing and the good behavior that we are hoping for. I will pause there. And are there any questions in the chat that I'm missing right now?
Right. Particular to this section.
So I believe we've addressed the prisoners living with life sentences, and we will get into the retroactive part in a moment as we step through to other clauses. So the next part that we clearly defined is what is a major misconduct. The previous law that has existed in Michigan has always used terms major misconduct. Many individuals who have a loved one who's currently incarcerated understand there are different classes, class 1, class 2, and class 3 misconducts. We wanted to clearly define this and the understanding so that there would be a clear picture for everyone. And so this is how we have done that. And I think, Sarah, you can kind of spell out how best this will work for us moving forward.
Sure. So what everyone sees in this section is this was really an effort to consolidate the definitions. The easier it is for the courts and other people to simply find what the terms mean, the better it is for you in terms of getting actual reform. And so there had been some suggestions that amendments or changes might specifically cite what you're used to as class 1 because of the way that different kinds of law work together, statutes and administrative law, and the people who read them. We took the step here of making sure that it was clear in the law up front that there wasn't any later administrative discretion for a period to redefine what it meant to commit the kind of offense that would deny you good time credit. And so what we've done here is specifically taken the terms that were in class 1 misconduct. And then what you're going to see later in the law is that the MDOC is charged with defining these very terms the same way that it has applied them in the class 1 misconduct case for a period of years, so that there's stability in the definitions, so that more specifically, no one goes back later and uses elevated class 2 misconduct to deny good time for a period, as we do look at this retroactively. I know that there are questions about whether this will apply retroactively. The desire is that it should. So similarly with section B, what we do there is we define the term good time that is used in subsection 1, right? Subsection 1 is kind of the hammer. And just like Jack was saying, they're the best definition for it that was going to be both possible to get through, as well as providing the maximum amount of time of credit was going to be defining it in this way that allows 30 days per month. So when we go to C, you see these things listed, and you'll see a variety of terms used throughout the bill that are an effort to really provide the clearest, most specific, most settled, and well-recognized language to define a term so that somebody doesn't have to, wiggle around with it or figure it out later. Does that answer your question, Mariah?
I think that clearly defines that. I do want to, before we move on to the next section, I see a number of questions are coming in. So for individuals who may have a life sentence and it gets cases overturned and are resentenced, the MDOC would be able to apply this if they have been given a number sentence and look back at their record. And as we clearly stated at the first paragraph, an absence of a record for discipline would allow them to be eligible for that calendar month period to earn. So they would be eligible. We intentionally have left out those individuals who have some type of life sentence that has no number, that if in the future life sentences in the Michigan system change to a number, they would therefore then be eligible to have this included because they now have a number to have it calculated. In regards to the term striking with rioting, would this include a hunger strike? And I think, Sarah, as you have stated and explained, this definition would match currently administrative language for the class 1 misconduct. So each of these terms here are clearly defined within the administrative language, and we would be using the definition that currently exists. Is that correct? Perfect. So
if I may, the other point to make here is this is the list, and therefore I think someone asked about the class 2 misconducts who might get elevated up into this list. This list precludes that from happening, if I understand correctly. So that practice of elevating class 2 into class 1, I think is, we head that off at the pass by clearly spelling out, this is the list of misconducts. Did I get that right, Sarah?
True. Yes, by design.
Perfect. And then the question of MDOC support, the efforts, they have not publicly stated in any sense where they feel like on any of the currently proposed bills, as everything is currently a draft or has been introduced but not had any hearings. They have not come forward with statements of support or in opposition. Conversations are being had, and we are opening that dialogue so that it's not like they're shocked. They know these conversations are being had and what we're working on. So clarifying that one. This next clause 3 here defines the record of all major misconducts. Charges of which a prisoner has been found guilty must be maintained and given to the parole board as part of the parole eligibility report. This would be your monthly report that individuals would receive. There is also a reason for us to keep track of this for the other side of things, for individuals who are a crime survivor who want to have accurate information in regards to the individual that they may have a case with. And so this easy record keeping process would allow updates to both the Otis and the VineLink system, and so that we can accurately maintain and notify individuals as incarcerated citizens move towards their parole hearing eligibility. And that really allows for a very open understanding across the board. And I think, sorry, did you have a statement you wanted to add there?
Sure, and this actually works both ways. This is a little bit of a carryover provision. You know, it's always been important to maintain a record, but you'll also notice if, as people reread subsection 1, or sort of the hammer is, that in the absence of a record, good time is necessary. So unless there's a record of misconduct, unless somebody's actually kept accurate records, then the prisoner is going to get credit for the month that's there. So this requirement to keep records and to have a good system in place also helps when we get to point to an absence of a record so that they get credit.
And if I may, can we just walk back to the first section, the hammer that you mentioned, the language, the idea being that if someone garners a misconduct, it only affects them for that month. That's why we wrote it in the form of 30 days for 30 days. So if during a 30-day period, someone were to obtain the misconduct charge, they would be ineligible, but only for that month. Hopefully that answers.
Just a slight clarification, it's the calendar month period of time. Yeah, so going into, I believe that was the question there. So yes, if someone were to receive a major misconduct from this C during a calendar month period of time, they would not receive a 30-day credit. That is how it is being defined, and it disqualifies them for that, earning that specific 30-day credit. The next month, if they are free of the misconduct, they would therefore be eligible to earn their misconduct for that next month. Hopefully that clarifies that question there for everybody. I believe that covers everything on this page. Oh, sorry, too fast there. So this goes into where Sarah was talking about how this will be applied retroactively in section 4. So I'll allow him kind of go over how this will work for us.
Once again, it takes a while for my mouse to get over the right spot. But the desire was to make sure, listen, we've been in this truth in sentencing scenario for a long time now. We are behind the curve. It's very important for people who even served all these good time periods throughout this period with no hope of a shorter sentence to be rewarded for all of the good conduct that they have engaged in. And so we wanted to make sure that, consistent with what's going on in most of the rest of the country, that credit really be given where credit is due, and that should be retroactive throughout anyone who's serving a sentence at the time that this goes into effect. So, when we look at section 4, and again, for those, I know this is a quick run through, you'll want to go back through and read it, but as much as possible, this should be the kind of language that someone can just pick up and read. And the reason that is twofold. One is, frankly, the courts will default to that sort of view and at least use it when they're trying to interpret this in the first place. So we want to be as clear as possible. And second, in an ethereal matter of democracy, we ought to be able to understand the laws that govern us. And so here you'll see that this section that we're talking about, this section 33, applies to everybody who's under the MDOC's jurisdiction and applies retroactively with respect to any prisoner under the MDOC's jurisdiction on the effective date when this goes into law. So it's express, clear, no questions. And then what we say is for everyone for whom there's a retroactive application, everyone who's been in and serving good time, we're saying that within 2 years, the MDOC has to calculate your new parole eligibility and discharge dates. The 2 years is a reasonable time period for them to actually calculate everybody they have. It's just going to take time. It takes resources. We've done the math. We've looked at the reality of the situation. That's not a drag your feet amount of time. That's not a let them sit around and make excuses amount of time. That's an amount of time in which people in good faith who are actually reviewing your records, the amount of records that they have to review, can get the job done. And it's important to pick a reasonable number here because this is by statute. Once the legislature puts this time period into place, nobody else gets to go and change it. It's not flexible. It's not like, okay, we'll see in a little while and maybe give you some more time. So we need to be reasonable here in the amount of time that we give them. So in 4A, we say 2 years to recalculate everyone's parole eligibility and discharge date. And then there are a couple different things that you'll see throughout the bill. One is in 4B, one was back in section 1, but these are areas where we ask what evidence is necessary or conclusive about how someone gets good time. So in B, if someone is one of the relatively fewer, smaller minority of prisoners who actually operate under a prior good time credit or disciplinary credit system, then those credits that they received, which will be short for shorter periods of time, not a full month under the prior systems, but the very fact that they received any credit at all during a month will be treated here, you see, as conclusive evidence. That's it, no questioning, don't get to go back and revisit it. It's conclusive evidence that they did not engage in what we've defined as major misconduct. Translation, that they get the month of good time for that time period from before, where they so far have only gotten a lesser time period. So does that help break down section 4, Mariah?
Yes, and I think that is a key point there that you brought up in regards to, for those individuals who have previously earned a type of credit, they've had a long sentence and they've been under MDOC's custody for a long period of time. We wanted to give them the most opportunity to earn the most amount of credits to have the earliest possible release date they could. And in doing so, after discussion with legal teams, and really looking at the history, the best option is, as Sarah said, we will go back, we will look and say, did January 1995 you have any major misconducts? No. Therefore, you will receive a 30-day credit for January 1995. And we will have them go through and do that for your entire record. Therefore, you would receive the most possible credits. And that way, everybody is now moving on one earned system that is the same. Very easily understood, very easily calculated, both for individuals personally, but also from the administrative viewpoint for MDOC, it is easy for them to calculate. I'm going to pause for a second because I see lots of questions coming in through the chat, and I don't know if there's anything massive. The PowerPoint will be made available to us. This recording is going to be on our YouTube channel. It will also be available right now because we are live streaming on Facebook, so you could go back and watch that on our Facebook page. And so in regards to the question, how this will be applied all at once, or will it be a gradual process that MDOC calculates and then adds it in? Unfortunately, we cannot control every minutia. We are going to, as it has been listed here, give them a 2-year period of time to go through all records. and determine the recalculations. We had a lot of discussions and talks about whether we would tell them they need to start with those individuals who were sentenced first and have been in the longest, or whether we would say those who have the shortest sentences and therefore they would be out the soonest. And we are going to leave that in the hands of MDOC's administrative team to determine what is the best method for them to calculate these. So I cannot tell you who will receive the calculation first because we don't know the process they will choose to do administratively. However, everyone who is currently in custody within 2 years would have their time recalculated. And then in regards to the question of forfeiture, I know that was asked both in the question and the answer. We're going to go into that a little bit more as we go through some of the other clauses. And then this is not a ballot right now. This is not a ballot initiative. We are going through the legal process with this bill. So we're going to go ahead and move to the next paragraph, and then we'll go back through some of these questions because I see there's a lot of them and we may answer a few more of them as we step through. Subsection 5 here, and this is just clearly stating on the flip side of things, if they are found guilty of committing a major misconduct, they will not receive their good time for that month. It's not going to be more. They're not going to have more taken away than that 30-day increment. It's just for that specific period of time. They're not earning their good time. Any other clarification that needs to be put there, Jack or Sarah? I think fairly straightforward, plain language there.
Right, and I think paragraph 5 here is going to state that the only amount of time that's in jeopardy is the 30 days of the month where the misconduct occurred. I think you stated the same thing, Mariah. Just to be clear, they can't lose more than the 30 days for that month that they incurred the misconduct.
Can I just hop in? I think there was a question that is pretty timely.
Okay.
Someone asked if several offenses are committed in 1 month, does that exclude them from several months or just that one 30-day period?
And we have set that up as it is that one 30-day period. We do know politically that may be a question that the lawmakers, a moment where they want to make some adjustments, but as written, whether you have one major misconduct or multiple major misconducts in that calendar month period of time, you are losing a 30-day credit, no more than that. Subsection 6 here addresses those who are serving concurrent or consecutive sentences. I'll let Sarah clearly explain that one so I don't mix those words.
The bottom line here, whether concurrent or consecutive, was that good time should apply in the way that you intuitively would think that it should. And so if you're serving consecutive sentences, then you ought to be earning off the first served sentence first. And by the time you, for example, earn off that entire first sentence, that sentence should be done and shouldn't come back. And then you start earning against the second sentence. And so it shouldn't be like you have to wait until the end for everything to vest or use some other word to kind of become real. Similarly, for concurrent sentences, when you're serving at the same time, well, it wouldn't make any sense. Say you're serving 2 sentences, A and B, and they're both going concurrently, they're going at once. What sense does it make to get 30 days off of sentence A if you get nothing off sentence B and they're both 10-year sentences or whatever? Well, then sentence B is still going to be 10 years no matter how good you've been. That's dumb. So for concurrent sentences, you should be earning the 30 days off of each sentence that's being concurrently served, so that when you actually get to the end of your longest concurrent sentence, you'll be eligible for parole then.
Excellent. So subsection 7 is just very clearly defining that it must not be construed to allow good time credit in cases of commutated sentence unless it's specifically spelled out in the executive order for that individual's new commutated sentence. So whatever it's spelled out is how it will be defined. We're not going to tell the executive branch how to commutate their sentences. We're going to give them that discretion. The subsection 8 here goes back to what Sarah was referring to before in regards to the period of time that they need to implement this and how to define the major misconducts in subsection 3B. So they will, for a period of time, in this case 2 years, use the definition that is defined as a class 1 misconduct that currently exists as effective written July 1st, 2018. So what everyone is currently operating at under, that is how we are keeping it. Something else there, Sarah, that we should clearly define in any way?
No, just as you're saying, this is really a trade-off. You can make the statute as specific and written in stone forever as you want to, but the more specific you want to be, the more that it's 500 pages long and nobody wants to pass it. So by actually taking the categories in 2C from class 1 misconduct without defining them, we have something that's digestible. But what that means is that eventually the MDOC is going to get to administratively define those things. It'll get to interpret what we mean by fighting, or what we mean by striking, as someone asked, or what we mean by sexual assault or felony or escape or any of the other things. At some point, it has to, as the administrative agency, interpret those things. So what we've done is given the system some stability here by making them adopt the same definitions that everyone is used to from class 1 misconduct, where this came from, making them hold those definitions for a period of 2 years while we sort out what these terms mean. And then after that, they can modify the definitions within reason, but at least provide some stability. And it strikes that balance between overwriting and underwriting the statute.
Excellent.
And if I may, there's a point I think worth highlighting here in section 8, and I did not clearly understand it as we were first working through it, and that is, the language here has 2 clocks that start at the same time. The first clock runs out in 90 days, and that is once it's been approved, it has to be implemented into the statute, into Michigan compiled law in 90 days. The second aspect is when the clock starts ticking, MDOC has a certain time frame in which to complete the calculations for people's early release date. And as I may be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, this is pretty significant in that in other cases where a bill may get passed and turned into law and put on the books, there may be this lingering, never-ending period of time when people are struggling to figure out how to implement it or get it implemented. Whereas in this case, they have 2 years. Get it implemented in 2 years. Do the calculations, finish your calculations in 2 years. So I think this is a significant point to make.
And yes, that is an excellent point to bring up in regards to other laws that have in many ways dragged on. Many people would think of juvenile lifer cases, Miller Law, and how we are still 5+ years now waiting for some people to have their sentences recalculated. So this clear definition of the 2-year period of time is unique in the way we have written this. And if you look at the other bills that we would be comparing to, productivity or disciplinary credits did not previously have kind of that clause put in that told them, this is how long you have to get this done. For number 9, for any time that they have received, they have been found guilty of a form of misconduct, they must receive their good time credit unless they review it and they determine that the misconduct meets the major misconduct. So just because you have a class 3 or a class 2, unless they've reviewed and it meets the statutory definition of a major misconduct, that will not take someone's credit away. So that's the second part of clearly defining that for us. Because I know some people asked about the raising the classes and the levels there. In clause 10 here, when interpreting this, Nothing herein can be construed to extend the parole eligibility date or discharge date of any prisoner beyond their parole eligibility date and discharge date that was effective. So if we go through and recalculate things, MDOT can't somehow make someone's sentence longer. That's not going to be able to be possible. And in the case of ambiguity, it's going to construe in the favor of granting. So if for some reason we don't have a record is missing for someone for a certain period of time, an absence of a record will say then they must have been good. We're going to give them a good time.
And even beyond that as well, if there's anything in here that any court later thinks isn't quite clear, and obviously we've tried to make everything clear, but they have to construe it in the prisoner's favor. And both of these principles, for those of you who've been around the law library in the prison or on behalf of your loved ones who are in prison, these will sound somewhat familiar from different constitutional rights. But just to make sure that things were really clear here, we laid these two rights out. Nothing about the law can make anybody's imprisonment harsher, than it was before. That's an ex post facto thing. And if there's an ambiguity, you get the benefit of it. That's a rule of lenity type issue.
And then the subsection 11 here, clause 11, says all references to the previous disciplinary credit or disciplinary time that existed, old credit systems are being struck out. We are moving forward with one system that everybody will be on and everyone will be calculating, which is unique. Previous iterations of credit systems here in the state have looked different. We are just moving forward with one system for everyone. I'm going to pause here and just go through the chats and questions because that is the language. It is short, it is simple, it is sweet, and very clearly able to define. And so in regards to the question that people have been asking about whether there is any authority to remove credits for misconduct given to wardens, correction officers, parole committee, it is not included. They do not have the authority. That is something we consciously chose to remove from previous credits, that's systems that existed here in the state, due to the fact that there has been at times examples of misconduct and abuse of that power. And we wanted it to be very clearly defined and understood who and what results in a misconduct and the removal of the credit. And so by clearly defining what a major misconduct is and clearly defining how the loss of credit occurs, then people don't really have any discretion in that system. We are clearly defining as best as we can. So that would not be possible for someone to lose all of their credits at the discretion of a warden. In regards to the question if the incarcerated person might be almost done before his discharge is calculated, unfortunately, that may be the case. There may be some individuals that when the time comes for their recalculation to occur in the 2-year period of time, they would have already been eligible for parole. Currently, MDOC has about 34,000 people in custody. If we remove about the 4,000 individuals who currently have some type of life sentence, that's still 29,000 individuals that they need to go through and calculate everyone's new date. So unfortunately, for some people, that may happen, and we cannot promise that someone will immediately be eligible for their parole as soon as their new recalculation occurred. And that is one thing that we are looking at is how will this affect the parole process and the future as we move forward. So those are things that we are talking and working with lawmakers and other agencies across the state about, but that is something. In regards to avoiding this bill dying like a good time, and really clearly, I know some people ask questions, is this a ballot? Is it going to be something we're voting on? So this is a bill that will be introduced through the legislative process, which means the senators and representatives in the state of Michigan will have the ability to review this bill, have hearings, and then go ahead and decide to vote on it and move it forward through the chambers. In order to do that, we would be directly changing the current law that exists, that is truth in sentencing. And that requirement will be, we will need a 3/4 majority of the Senate and a 3/4 majority of the House of Representatives here in Michigan to both chambers will have to vote to pass this bill. That is a very high bar and threshold. However, it is also the most cost-effective way to pass law here in the state of Michigan. A ballot proposal, which would require collecting signatures for this specific language and having people sign, probably to be successful will be close to $3 to $4 million. And then once it has been collected all the signatures and goes to the election in November of 2022, would still need to pass with the majority vote in the state of Michigan, which would require a lot of media and push. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that we do all of this education and give the lawmakers and legislators the opportunity to move this forward. And if they want to, if there is pressure from the people of Michigan on their representatives and senators to pass this bill, they could do it very quickly. It is possible. They have passed bills quickly. But if not, the earliest this would be available if we got the signatures and got it on the ballot for November would not be till November or December of 2022, which is quite a ways away for some people who would love to see it tomorrow. Unfortunately, we can't make it happen tomorrow. They're not in session. Are there other questions?
There was one that I'd like to address that was, so essentially someone's sentence could be cut in half, 50% reduction. And when we looked around at the rest of the country, we found at least, I think, 9 other states that offered at least a 50% potential for a reduction or greater. Some states, it was even as high as 83%, if I'm remembering my statistics right, from California. So it's not out of the pale to request a 50% reduction in someone's sentence. And that's how we arrived there. The other reason that 50% sticks in my brain is because if we look at sentence growth and average time served over the last several decades, it's essentially doubled. So really, we're just trying to bring this pendulum back into balance and say, 30 or 40 years ago, these sentences were about half of what they are, and people were spending about half the amount of time that they are today. So that's where this idea of a 30-day for 30-day 50% reduction came from.
Correct. In some of those states that do other calculations, there are a few who write it as a day for day credit. There are some who write a 6-month credit for 6 months served type of thing. We wanted to make sure that whatever period of time we defined also matched the idea of a equal consequence if they were to lose it. So if someone had one major misconduct in a 6-month period of time and they were to lose all of their credit for that 6-month period of time, we didn't think that was a fair trade-off there. So in that 30-day period of time was small enough that for individuals who maybe did have a misconduct, there was still a consequence, but it wasn't like if I had one bad day and received a major misconduct, the next day I'm earning my credit, which also wouldn't necessarily be a fair consequence.
Another question that came out was, are there any crime categories which are ineligible, exclusions, carve-outs? The answer to that is no.
We'll move forward with a few more of the last few points we have slide-wise, and then we can answer any more questions as we get there. So the previous iterations that have existed in Michigan, and this is Ann's specialty for sure, this area would be, there was a good time that existed all the way until 1978 when Proposal B went into effect. Those credits were eligible for everyone. They had a very stair-stepped calculation. After the first few years, you could earn a different amount, and then the next few years, you earn a little bit more. Ours is a very flat calculation, 30 days for 30 days. Everybody can say they were good for that calendar month, they get their 30 days. Instead of the complications that have occurred in history here in Michigan, where people have had miscalculations and had credits recalculated so that they're accurate. We also have a much higher credit amount. A 30-day credit is on the higher end of the threshold. 30-day credit has never existed previously in the state of Michigan. So it's a large amount, and going back to that easy to calculate amount. During the disciplinary credits of the 80s and 90s, so when they removed good time credits for certain assault offenses, they had some riots. There were people who were not happy with the fact that credits were removed here in the state of Michigan, and they realized they needed to give them some type of credit. And so they did a disciplinary credit. Disciplinary credits are kind of the inverse of a good time. They're saying very similar things legally, but they're the inverse of if you don't receive any discipline, you get your credit. If you're good, you get your credit. Kind of same, two sides of the same coin. Again, the disciplinary credits, it was a flat calculation, so similar to what we were doing, but it was a much lower credit amount. Again, I believe it was 5 days per month someone could earn. And so that's not a ton when you compare to 30 days. And so this one will be easy to calculate, very similar to that. And that applied to everyone who had sentences here in the state of Michigan. Ours, again, will only apply to those who have a numbered sentence. So there is a bit of a difference in that, but it's not just for certain offenses. It's as long as you have a number attached to your sentence length, you are earning credits. In the past, it has been broken down between assaultive crimes and non-assaultive crimes. That's not what we are doing with our bill. And then there were two recent bill introductions earlier this year. HB 46770 is a introduction of a productivity credit. It is not retroactive. So for those who are currently incarcerated and serving sentence, it will not go back in time to recalculate anything. It would only be moving forward. It will only be a maximum of up to a 20%, but no more than 2 years reduction in total. Again, as we talked about earlier, ours could be up to a 50% reduction of someone's sentence, which is a significant amount of time for those who choose to follow rules and not receive their misconduct. And then the productivity credits were connected to specific actions and programs. Unfortunately, we know that programs, educational, vocational, and otherwise, are only accessible at certain places to certain individuals in certain levels in facilities. A good time credit system, as we have proposed, would be available to everyone, no matter what facility you are at or what level you are currently serving at. So a little bit of differences. In theory, as written right now, a productivity credit bill could work in conjunction with our good time credit bill. There is nothing that's in conflict between the two of them. And if both were to pass and move forward, they could work together to lower someone's sentence. HB 4489, which was introduced in March by Representative LaGrand, did not clearly define what major misconducts were. It didn't use clear penal code in regards to what's a class 1, class 2, class 3. And so if MDOC were to interpret the major misconducts in a different way, lower level class misconducts could be elevated. So that's different than what we have now. And it did allow for warden discretion and parole board discretion to remove people's credits. We looked at both those items and feel like that is not something we want to be possible, and that's why it was excluded from our bill introduction. I think at this time, we can go ahead and see if there are any other questions that we're missing right now. Timeline for having the bill number. So we plan to have this bill introduced early September, approximately September 14th, or I believe it's 19th are the two dates that we're throwing up in the air. We're waiting till after the summer recess is over for the lawmakers and they come back into Lansing. Everybody knows the day before vacation, you're not really paying attention to things. So we didn't want to introduce it last week of June before the lawmakers go on break. And so there's a question here. The current law allows for the reinstatement of lost credits by a warden. While I understand your suggested bill will not allow them to be taken away, does this bill allow for reinstatement of previously removed credits? Sarah?
So my initial reaction was going to be an absolute yes because of the way that the way the statute reads. But I just want to double check one thing. So the way the statute overall reads, any time period for which, once this goes into effect, for which the prisoner had no major misconduct. There's going to be one where they must be credited good time, period, end of story. And the must term is important to courts and everybody else who reads the bill. The only place that I just wanted to double check. So I would say that overall the answer is yes, it will all be reinstated by the way that the bill functions. The only question is in a sentence like in section 5, which is actually a carryover sentence from the previous bill. Any good time not earned as a result of the prisoner being found guilty of a major misconduct must never be restored. So here's the way I would answer that. I would say or how that might apply in this situation for the person asking the question. Someone like a warden might argue, well, that means that if you committed a major misconduct at a certain time, and I took away a whole bunch of credit from you, that you can't ever restore it. The answer from us would be, and what I believe is the substantially stronger side of the argument, and the reason that we've written it this way, the answer would be no. That sentence only applies to the calculations that we are doing month for month under this system. And B, by the way, if anybody forgot or thought that was ambiguous, take a look at section 10B. If there's anything that you think is ambiguous, then it has to be construed in your favor. So the intent behind trying to get the clearest language possible was to say that through the musts that are in this language, you have to get the good time credit. You have to get it from time periods before. The whole record is reopened, and you get the credit for any time that you were not committing a major misconduct, no matter if someone later wanted to revoke it from you. And the only time retroactively that you will be dinged or not given good time credit is when there's an affirmative record that there was a major misconduct at that time period. That's it. That's supposed to be it. So the intent is that there's no real room to leave in place prior revocations of good time. And I know we had meant and intended to account for that. I just wanted to make sure that we'd seal that up. I believe that we've sealed that up in the way that I just described. Can't eliminate every ambiguity in a bill, but I think that will do it for you.
Thank you for that. In regards to how do we make this bill not sit in committee and die, that is a legislative process, and it requires the people of Michigan to put pressure on their lawmakers to know that this is an important bill to move forward. So contacting your lawmakers in telling them that this is something you do want to see passed. So you can go to mijustice.org /sign. You can sign our electronic petition, which just makes us aware that you are supportive of this and can allow us, if we do need to move to a ballot initiative, to contact you in the future. But after you sign that petition, you are actually able to send an email directly to your lawmaker and reach out to them saying that you are supportive of this. So many people have been sending those emails and reaching out. You are also very highly encouraged to call your lawmaker's office, your representative and senators, and let them know you are supportive of this. I know, Sarah, you have a hard deadline, so if you need to leave, you are more than welcome. I see there are many questions being asked here that we'll go ahead and try and go through and affect them. In regards to, it does not currently have a bill number. Once it is introduced in September, we will have a bill number assigned at that point in time. At this time, our lead sponsor is Senator Irwin, who is working with us. We do have a number of representatives and senators who have said they would like to co-sponsor, and so we are working on those negotiations and discussions with them. In regards to those individuals who were interested in understanding how this would not apply to victims of crime. So currently, anyone who receives a sentence that's less than a year will serve time in a county jail facility. In a county jail, that sentence automatically will receive good time credits. And therefore, it is no different than what we are asking to apply currently for those who are in the prison system. Also, individuals currently in Michigan now who receive a parole or probation sentence after they have served their time in the jail or prison facility are eligible to receive good time and have that parole sentence cut short because they have received their good time on parole and they are following the rules and policies. So we are looking for the policy to be the same no matter where you are serving your time, whether it's a jail, a prison, or on probation and parole. However, we care very much about victims. And unfortunately, the current system does not do a very good job of helping victims' voices to be listened to and heard throughout the process. Currently, after someone is sentenced, the only required notification for prisoners from the state of Michigan, whether you are talking about the county sheriff's, the jail, or the prosecutor's office, is a letter will be mailed to someone's last known address to give them a notice of a parole hearing for someone. In this system, we allow a much better dialogue to be open because people will be notified if the offenders are earning their good time. If the sentence lengths are changing in any way, Otis and VineLink will be updated monthly. So individuals who have received a number sentence may have their credits apply and their sentence length will be shorter than initially was told. We would like to see this happen, as does in a number of other states, that at sentencing, the sentence length will be given, the minimum and maximum, and then the earliest possible release date based on if someone were to earn all of their credits. This would allow both a victim to have a clear understanding of the earliest possible date they could come in contact with someone and have to appear for a parole hearing, but it will also give individuals who have been sentenced an incentive to work on their behavior and what is the earliest possible date that they would be able to be released and move on after they have served their sentence. So I think that's a really important thing. And I think, Jack, you might have something you'd like to add there.
No, I'm sure there are many questions, and I don't know if we're going to have time for all of them. But I personally wanted to ask Dr. Maher, with regard to all the history that you have studied and the various good times, disciplinary credits, finally truth in sentencing, how do you view this bill when compared to the several previous attempts to restore some form of a good time credit? And can you comment on maybe some of the differences that you're seeing here with this bill?
Sure. One of the things that Mariah pointed out, and I think is really unique about this bill, is that it will create there only being one system, which historically has been an issue. Once Proposal B passed, and then those who got rid of good time credits under Proposal B then had disciplinary credits. So there were still people getting good time disciplinary credits. And then in 86, we moved to everybody moving forward getting disciplinary credits. There's always kind of been this interesting flux and hodgepodge, if you will, of who's getting what. And I think it's really interesting that this new bill would kind of not gloss over that, but fix that issue of everyone getting an equal amount of time. Also, the not carving out is interesting, obviously, going to support that. Historically, there have been carve outs for particular offenses, like with Proposal B. There also used to be differences in if somebody was sentenced as a habitual, they could sometimes get less good time, sometimes they couldn't get good time. So there have always been kind of these weird intricacies. And I think it's really interesting and good that this bill moves past all of those and is kind of more blanketed and applies to everybody.
Yeah, in that regard, the no carve outs was pretty intentional because we felt as though the punishment was dictated at the time of sentencing, and the punishment was the length of sentence, the length of time that someone will be incarcerated, the loss of freedom for that period of time. And then to go back and say, well, there's these various opportunities for some people to earn a credit, but not others, felt like punishment on top of punishment. I don't think it can be considered ex post facto, but it just felt wrong from just a straightforward feeling of equal justice for all kind of thing. So that's why we are trying to get the no carve out clear. We'll see. By the way, when we introduce the bill, there'll probably be lots of ongoing discussions, negotiations, and potentially, modifications. The purpose of this meeting today is to present the bill to the public so everybody can see the starting point, right? I cannot guarantee that will be the final bill when we get it dropped in September, but clearly this is our intention. This is where we are starting from, and hopefully everybody can get on board with that position.
Sarah.
I just wanted to pick up exactly where you two were leaving off. And as I apologize that I do have to leave for a hard prior engagement, but I really want to applaud the work that MJA is doing and strongly ask everyone who happens to be watching the live feed to really support it and get behind it, because it's going to take a lot of work to do. Like Dr. Maher was saying, this really is a comprehensive solution that, while it doesn't hit every last person, hits a major portion of what's wrong with our current system, and is a huge step forward, like Jack was saying, a huge step forward over where we're at. And even if after negotiations you came back with a shorter time period for the good time, if it's 21 days, 15 days, well, that's a huge step forward. But Jack had mentioned California, and Clancy Advisors, we're really proud to support this. We practice in Southern Michigan and Southern California. I do a lot of work in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas, and we are so far behind where other states are in terms of understanding how to try to deal with appropriate issues of punishment while rewarding good behavior and dealing with the practicalities of managing the prison system and the rest of our society. And so the ability that we have here to really get behind Senator Irwin, to really reach out to other senators and representatives to strongly support this, to try to get to that 3/4 mark, or to support a petition drive, is very, very important and would represent a huge leap forward. So I just really wanted to thank MJA, because you've been doing this work much longer than I've been involved, and to thank Dr. Maher for her work, because I think this is terrific. And while there may be a few things around the edges that we all will like to work on in our second and third and fourth bill, this is really a terrific effort. So thanks you all, and I hope that folks will really support it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and enjoy your graduation.
Thank you.
Your daughter's graduation.
There it is.
And I think there were just a couple small points that we'd like to address before we finish up for the day. One, we will have this draft available on our website probably starting tomorrow for people to be able to view. This presentation will be on our YouTube starting tomorrow, but the live feed was also recorded on Facebook, so you can rewatch things. In regard to everyone who has concerns with two categories. One, in regards to those who are lifers in any way, shape, or form, with or without parole. We struggled at the beginning and talked about lots of things of how we could address this or not address that category within our bill. We have consciously chosen not to directly address it because of the complex statutes and laws that surround that area. There are a number of wonderful organizations who are working on life and life without parole sentences, Americans Friends Service Committee, the ACLU, and in our discussions with them and their experience, they are working on different laws that could, in theory, put a number on a life sentence for the state of Michigan. If a number was ever put on a life sentence length in the state of Michigan, those individuals would then be eligible for good time credits. Unfortunately, we cannot change that part of the law right now in our specific bill. We are trying to take small pieces of the pie, not eat the whole pie at once in regards to criminal justice reform. And that goes with victims. We are very supportive of victim services. We are having conversations with lots of different organizations that work with victims and are supportive of crime survivors. And we are working on what would be the best items and policies and programs for those who have been a crime survivor, and what do they need to see. This bill is not for addressing their needs. We want to create bills that are directly addressing victim and crime survivor needs. And so that is why this specific language does not write that in there. We want to make sure whatever gets written for a crime survivor is written for a crime survivor bill package and addresses their needs and concerns. So that's why there isn't language in here. So in the future, in our work, we will be working on crime survivor items and policies and programs. I believe that answers almost everyone's questions. I know there are probably others. You can reach out to us, contact@mijustice.org, and we will get back with you. Jack, if there's anything else you'd like to say as our president.
No, again, just thank you to all the hard work of everyone behind the scenes and all of our partner organizations that have supported us and guided us. And a special thanks to you, Mariah, for putting this together today. As Mariah said, if there's any further questions, I believe all of our email addresses are on the website. So if someone had a question for me or some of the other board members or for Mariah, the executive staff, those emails are published in public information. So please ask us. And thank you all for your support of this effort.
Thank you.
All right, we'll leave it at that and have a good rest of the day.
Hopefully nobody needs an arc or anything later with all the rain. Hopefully everybody stays safe.
Take care.
Thanks for
everyone.
having me.
Thank you.